All right, let's dive right in, shall we? Cryptocurrency, and specifically Bitcoin. We're going deep into its history today.
It's a hot topic, and for good reason.
Yeah,
But to really understand where it's going, you've got to understand where it came from.
totally. And you sent over some awesome material on this, a whole timeline of Bitcoin, really from its very beginnings to right now. So let's dig in.
Sounds like a plan.
So these sources, they map out the entire evolution of, well, mainly Bitcoin. From those early, like, what if ideas to, where it is in the world today. But, and maybe this shouldn't be surprising, it didn't all start with Bitcoin, did it?
You're absolutely right. It's easy to think of Bitcoin as the starting point, but its roots go back decades earlier, long before Bitcoin was even a thought in Satoshi's mind.
Okay, so like, what were those early attempts at, I don't know, digital cash?
Well, you got to go back to the 80s and 90s. Pioneers like David Chaum were already trying to crack this whole electronic cash thing.
Really? That early?
Oh, yeah. He developed something called digicash. The idea was to use cryptography, the science of secret codes, to make digital transactions secure and anonymous, just like real cash.
So were they basically trying to create a digital version of cash online?
Exactly. Then in 1998, Nick Szabo came up with this concept called BitGold.
Bit what?
BitGold. It was actually a huge step forward because it introduced this idea of using computational puzzles, sort of like early mining, to create and distribute digital value.
Wow. So they were like laying the groundwork without even realizing it.
Exactly. But they all kept running into a big, big problem. Double spending.
Double spending. Okay, explain that one.
Imagine you could just copy and paste digital cash an unlimited number of times.
Chaos. Total chaos.
Exactly. With traditional currency, you've got banks and governments that prevent that. But with a decentralized system, you can't just have everyone checking with each other every time someone wants to spend something.
Right. That defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got groundbreaking ideas, but this massive flaw. So enter Satoshi Nakamoto.
Right. The year is 2008, global financial crisis. Trust in traditional systems is, well, shot. And suddenly, boom, the Bitcoin white paper appears. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
The timing wasn't exactly a coincidence, was it?
Not at all. People were ready for an alternative.
October 31st, 2008. Bitcoin's birthday. I mean, he even bought the bitcoin.org domain back in August of '08. It's like he knew, okay, so how did he finally solve this double spending problem?
That, my friend, is where blockchain technology comes in. The engine that makes Bitcoin possible.
I've heard of blockchain, but to be honest, it kind of makes my head spin.
Think of it like a giant digital ledger that everyone on the network can see and verify.
Okay.
So every transaction is recorded in this ledger. Each entry is called a block, and each block is linked to the one before it, creating a chain. Makes it virtually impossible to tamper with.
Uh-huh. So that's how you prevent double spending. Clever. But in those early days, Bitcoin was basically worthless, right? I mean, remember that Bitcoin pizza day back in May 2010? 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas.
Yeah, if only they held on to those. It really puts into perspective just how much Bitcoin's value has exploded.
Talk about a wild ride. It was a roller coaster for those early adopters, wasn't
Oh,
it?
absolutely. 1 minute it's up to $1, the next it's down to pennies.
So what changed? What drove that early growth?
I'd say a few things. Media attention, for sure. Speculation definitely played a role too. Even with the volatility, people were starting to see its potential. And then in 2011, things got interesting. Litecoin pops up, one of the first major altcoins.
Litecoin. Right, the silver to Bitcoin's gold.
Exactly. And Litecoin was basically a modified version of Bitcoin, designed for faster transactions and a few other technical tweaks. It proved that Bitcoin's open source code wasn't just a blueprint. It was a launch pad for innovation.
So Bitcoin went from being the only game in town to the inspiration for a whole ecosystem.
You got it.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? I mean, Mt. Gox, that was a dark time.
It definitely was a wake-up call for the entire cryptocurrency world. 2014, Mt. Gox, one of the biggest Bitcoin exchanges at the time, gets hacked. 850,000 Bitcoins gone. Just like that.
It does make you realize that for all its potential, cryptocurrency was still in its infancy. A bit like the Wild West, maybe.
Totally.
So what happened? Did everybody just give up after that?
Not at all. Like the Wild West, things eventually started to get a bit more tamed. The Mt. Gox hack forced the industry to take security seriously.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. That's when we started to see things like cold storage, which is basically storing cryptocurrency offline, and multi-factor authentication, all to make it harder for the bad guys to get in.
Well, it's good to know that those lessons were learned. And from those ashes, Bitcoin rose again. By 2016, the price is climbing steadily, setting the stage for that massive surge in 2017.
Ah, yes, 2017, a pivotal year. Bitcoin smashes its all-time high, nearly hitting $20,000. Mainstream awareness explodes, and we saw some serious technological advancements like the Lightning Network, which made transactions faster and cheaper than ever.
And then there's Ethereum and this whole concept of smart contracts. But we'll save that for part 2.
Wild ride, right? Those crazy price swings.
Yeah, talk about a reality check. And it wasn't just Bitcoin, right? Ethereum had its own moment in the sun in early 2018, then boom, down it went too.
It did. It felt like the party was over before it even really got started.
So what happened? Why the sudden crash?
Well, a few things. Remember, this was all still pretty new. Regulators around the world were starting to take notice, concerns about scams, market manipulation, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I remember that.
And on top of that, you had this explosion of new cryptocurrencies.
Oh, yeah. Everyone and their dog was launching an ICO back then.
Exactly. It was a recipe for speculation.
Hmm?
And unfortunately, some shady stuff went down, too.
People got caught up in the hype. And when the market correction hit, well, it hit hard.
It did.
So regulatory uncertainty, maybe a bit of irrational exuberance in the mix, too.
You could say that. But even with all that, Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency market, it bounced back. And that says something, doesn't it?
It does. Why do you think that is? Why didn't it just go away?
Because beyond all the hype, all the volatility, there's a fundamental technology there with incredible potential: blockchain.
You mentioned smart contracts earlier.
Right. So Bitcoin kind of proved that blockchain could revolutionize currency. Ethereum came along and said, hold my beer. It showed us that blockchain's applications, they go way beyond just money.
Okay, so explain it to me one more time, like I'm 5. What's a smart contract?
Okay, so imagine a contract, but it enforces itself automatically.
Right.
So let's say we're making a bet on a game.
Okay.
We could write the terms of our bet into a smart contract, and when the game's over, boom, the contract automatically sends the money to whoever won. No need to get a ref involved or anything.
Wow.
Wow.
That's wild. So what else can you do with these smart contracts?
Oh man, all sorts of things. Think supply chain management. You could track products from the factory all the way to the store, making sure they're legit. Healthcare? You could store medical records securely, give patients control over their own data.
It's like we're just scratching the surface. For
Exactly. It's like the early days of the internet. We have no idea what's coming next.
So to wrap things up, what's the future hold for all this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but I can say this: the next chapter in the story of cryptocurrency, it's going to be interesting.
Exciting and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for, walking us through all of this.
My pleasure. Happy to nerd out about crypto anytime.
Now, before we go, one last thought to chew on. So we started with those early attempts to create, like, digital cash.
And now look at us, talking about Bitcoin hitting, what was it, $20,000. Smart contracts changing the world.
It really makes you wonder what's next.
Yeah.
Will we all be using Gitcoin to buy our coffee soon? Are smart contracts going to make lawyers obsolete?
Big questions. And honestly, I have no clue. No crystal ball over here. But I can say with some certainty that the future of all this, cryptocurrency, blockchain, it's going to be wild. That much I know.
It's exciting, but also kind of feels like we're standing on the edge of, well, something completely unknown, doesn't it? I mean, we have a sense of the possibilities, but who knows what's actually going to happen?
That's what makes this whole space so fascinating.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, hey, thanks again for taking us on this journey. I feel like we covered so much ground today. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, truly, it's been a blast.
And to our listener, thank you so much for sending us this material. Clearly, you've got a curious mind, and honestly, that's what it's all about. Keep asking those thought-provoking questions. Maybe you'll be the one to write the next chapter in all of this.
Hear, hear. Until next time, see ya.